I remember seeing him on Instagram and I was like, you look fabulous. What's going on? It's like you're glowing. And he's like, oh my goodness, I got to tell you about this technique, the emotion code. Have you heard about it? I'm like, no, but tell me everything.
How does emotional trauma block your acting? It's a good question. We are talking with Ydaiber Orozco. She is an actress, podcaster, and coach, and she's going to break it down for us. I'm Lydia Nicole, and this is Acting Smarter Now. What is emotion code?
The emotion code is a healing technique that is similar to, if you were to compare with something else, would be like Reiki or something where you move the energy from the body. And the difference is that you don't have to touch the person. You can literally use muscle testing to determine what are the emotions that are trapped in somebody's body or in somebody's subconscious, which is usually what happens. And even pets might have these trapped emotions, and you use this technique to identify the emotions and then to release them. So that's kind of like in a nutshell what it is. But it is an energy healing technique.
So, if I'm having a spasm, how would I release that energy?
So what happens is sometimes we have physical ailments that are a response to something that is happening or that happened before and it got trapped in the body and it has nothing to do with the physical part of it. So your muscle spasm could be coming from a place of not necessarily, it doesn't have to be big trauma, but it could literally be an emotion that was strong and it got attached to your body somehow. It got lodged there. So you're feeling something and it's kind of hard to let go. So the person that you work with, the practitioner, will identify what this emotion or emotions are, and then will utilize a technique that is called muscle testing to determine what are those emotions. In my case, I use a pendulum because again, I'm not usually with the person in front of me, so I can tap into your subconscious using a pendulum to determine what is the emotion from the chart that is coming up, and then we'll go ahead and we have like a little step-by-step thing that we do to release the emotion. What happens is that most people experience a release within this session and 7 days. Sometimes it doesn't happen right away. For me it did. Like when I had my very very first session, I was just like a noodle. Like I was just like, whoa, this definitely moved some energy around. But some people might not feel anything. They're like, oh, this is weird, I didn't feel anything. So you might feel it 3, 4, 5, 7 days later because we're moving energy. So it depends also how attached it is to the body. So that's kind of like what it looks like.
And what are the benefits of doing this practice?
So imagine about us going around not having this heaviness, not having this anxiety that we don't know sometimes where it's coming from. We just feel it. Or getting rid of a physical pain, because again, some people do experience the improvement physically. That's the biggest benefit, right? Like when we can feel grounded and at ease. There's something very beautiful that happened with me, which it was I started feeling really magnetic. Like there was something about it after I got rid of all of these emotions. And again, it doesn't mean that they're not going to get trapped again, that circumstances will continue to happen and these emotions, a version of this emotion will come back. And you just have to keep clearing these energies, right? But that first release for me, I clearly remember this happened. We're talking about the end of 2020 when I started working on this technique as a client, as a patient, if you will. And then in January, I remember I went to get my headshots done and never worked with this photographer before. And he's like, there's something about you that is very like, I don't know, like, yeah, I would say magnetic was the right word. And then within a couple of days, I booked 2 jobs back to back because I was feeling so in my body. I was feeling so excited. I was feeling so light. And all of that was just interesting to see how other people were noticing. Because actually, that's how I came to the technique, right? I saw somebody who I know, and this is in the middle of the pandemic, right? So we're not seeing people in person. But I remember seeing him on Instagram, and I was like, you look fabulous. What's going on? It's like, you're glowing. And he's like, oh my goodness, I gotta tell you about this technique, the emotion code. Have you heard about it? I'm like, no, but tell me everything. And he's like, why don't you read the book? And then if it resonates, let me know and I'll connect you with my practitioner. And I was like, absolutely 100%. And I went in, read the book within 2 days, and I was in a session with her within a week. That's how it came for me. So it was very interesting that the way that came to me was almost like the same way that then now I was becoming or I was showing up as, and people were noticing that. So for me, it was very interesting to realize that people around me were like, you're glowing. There's some magnetism about you that I can't explain. And I'm like, yeah, I can feel it.
For actors, that is how we move, is in our emotions. If you are deep into your character, there's a lot of emotional stuff going on for the character. In going after what you want, you're setting your intention, dealing with the other character. I listened to the book, The Emotion Code, preparing for this. And one of the things the gentleman was talking about was a friend of his daughter who was going through creativity, insecurity, and how the practice really helped her. And when I heard that, I was like, oh my God, this is for actors. As far as, how many times are we as actors walking, being very insecure, very unsure of what we're doing, and emotionally entangled in our feelings, and, we're stuck. We can't go
Yeah.
anywhere. What have you found? You talked about the magnetism, that it frees your charismatic self to go and do what you need to do. Other than that, what else have you found in being a patient, in being someone who is actually doing the practice?
I do remember that in one of my sessions, one of the first emotions that came up was insecurity, and was creative insecurity specifically, and self doubt. And what happens is that when you release the emotions, they don't are as active and present anymore. So what I noticed was that even though it's not like I fully got rid of my doubt, but it's gotten so minimal, or it has gotten so soft, that it doesn't interrupt the process of creativity. In my case, I felt that ideas were flowing because my creativity was just like open. The moment that I started getting rid of those emotions, the moment that I started processing those emotions, because that's the thing, right? They get stuck because you don't process them. You don't process them for whatever reason. Sometimes you don't process them because they're shocking and it's very difficult for you to deal with. And you just put it in the back burner and you're like, I don't have the bandwidth to deal with this right now. But sometimes they don't get processed because you don't even notice that you got them, right? Especially when it's something that is outside of you. I remember also reading the book about this woman who talked about how she had this particular, I think it was fear or horror that kept coming up in her session. And she's like, I just can't pinpoint, I can't remember anything that has happened to me, which, is good to know and to notice that you do not have to remember what could have caused the emotion to get trapped, right? So in her case, they just kept trying to figure out where this was coming from. And she realized that it's because she witnessed the assassination of President Kennedy. And even though it was not her emotion, because it was something that she saw on TV, it just got her so riled up that she was feeling this horror and fear for years and years and years. So the moment that you start getting rid of that, then everything feels less activating. You're not as triggered anymore. So even for myself, I remember I used to have, and this is I'm not ashamed to share this. I used to feel a lot of jealousy. around other actors. I used to feel like, oh man, why this isn't happening for me? And, blah, blah, blah. And you and I have talked about this before, and you have given me some really, really good practical advice on how to remember who we are and our own authenticity and all of these things that remove that notion of competition. But at that moment, at that place that I was then, I was feeling really insecure because I was like, well, must be something wrong with me because I'm like, I am going out for the parts and I'm just not getting them and blah, blah, blah. I had this blah, blah, blah happening constantly in my life. But I felt that all of that started feeling less and less and less. And I know for a fact that the emotion code was a big part of that. I mean, I've done a lot of self work, but the emotion code was for me the door that opened a lot of spiritual practices for me, and I could feel the difference. I could feel it in my body. I can still do. I still use the technique for myself, and sometimes I do it on my own, or sometimes I go to my practitioner, and I love having the reflection from someone else. So I still go to my practitioner when I feel I need some tune up.
You said something about feeling jealous of other actors, and that's normal. That's a normal thing because we see other people moving and we don't feel like we're moving. And to be able to take that and go, okay, for me, I find it a puzzle. It's like, okay, they're moving. We started at the same place, but they're moving. I think it's important for the actor to remember, what's for us, no one can take. And sometimes we're looking at people that are getting what's for them. We would never be able to fit in what they're doing. When I first came to Los Angeles, all the Latinas we were always put together for an audition. It didn't matter what you look like, you know,
Mhm.
they saw every Latina for a part. And so you had to walk into knowing who you were and not trying to figure out what did they want, because the fact that they're calling everybody that is Latina means they have no clue of what they want. And the person that usually books the job 9 times out of 10 is the person who goes in there confidently, who says, I've got the goods. They're not questioning, do you want me? What is it that you want? But they're going in their power, in their authenticity. They're going in and saying, this is what I got. You either want it or you don't, but this is me. And I think for actors, it's important to just go in there and do what you do and be confident in what you do. Because sometimes the part is not, you may think it's right for you, but from the producer's perspective, they're looking at how you match with other actors that they are casting. It has nothing to do with you personally or your gifts or your skill set. It just, they're looking for a certain look. You might be great, but you're too short. You might be great, but you would overwhelm the star. You would take over just your energy. You talked about that magnetism. That magnetism might be too much for that leading actor, and they've got to protect that leading actor. And we're not taught that in acting class. We're not taught, do your work, do the best that you can, know that the goal is to book the job, but the fact that you got the audition, you already got a job. Not everybody gets to go into that place and say, I auditioned for this. We don't see the value in auditioning. And there's so much value to auditioning, because sometimes that audition that you did not get, but you slammed it out of the park, gets you a bigger job.
There's something also that I want to add, because this is something that I have learned through the process of, again, all the work that I've done. And is, I used to see people that were, let's say, like me, just to put us all in a bucket, right? Latina, blah, blah, blah. I used to see it as a competition. I used to see, like, oh, it's me against them. Now, I honestly, for the most part, we're humans, right? But for the most part, I get to see them as people who expand me, what my possibilities are. So even
Yes.
if we started in the same place, because I see that they're able to do it. Instead of me feeling triggered by not getting the thing, I feel like, well, if they could do it, that means that is my proof that I can do it as well. So I use it now as fuels for inspiration and for motivation.
Healthy competition. We
Mhm.
want to be competitive. If we're in a healthy circle, the people around us are working. So if they're working, we're going to work. I always see it as, if the people in my circle are working, that is fantastic, because that means that energy is going around and I'm going to get the job too. But to be competitive means you have to be sharpened. Maybe I didn't do well because my co-reading is not that good, or my self-tape is not that good. So let me take a course or a class or get coaching so that I can come up to the next level, because it's not always about your raw talent. You have to have technique,
Mhm.
and you could be the best actor in the world and not be able to do a self tape, or be able to do an interview. That requires a different technique. And so I think competition is necessary if it's healthy. If it makes you feel like a victim, then you are seeing competition in the wrong way.
Mhm.
If it's shutting you down, which is what the emotion code is all about, is going, wait a minute, you got some energy that is stuck somewhere, and you got to let it out. And I think for actors, this is such a great tool to be able to use as part of keeping your body flowing. It is great. And when I was listening to an interview you did and you were talking about, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. We need to talk about this. So, processing emotions is not just I'm not feeling good or whatever. There's a lot of levels to the emotion code, because
Yeah.
you process things that, as I was listening to the book, he was talking about a woman who was carrying blocked emotion from when she was a baby, and her mother pinned the diaper to her body, like, and didn't realize the girl was crying, crying, crying a long time. And when she went to change the diaper, she realized that. And that woman kept that trauma from 1 years old to an adult, and it caused a lot of physical pain in her legs. And what the practitioner did for her, it was gone.
Yeah, when you talk about layers, there is something that we call the heart wall, right? I want you to imagine an onion that has all of these layers, right? So to get to the center of the onion, you have to start peeling those layers. So the heart is exactly like that, right? We have our heart, and then there is an energy on top of the other that has been covering the heart to protect us, right? It's all with a good intention. Everything is with a good intention of protecting the heart. So if we were to look at it from a place of distance, I remember that when I started my work, my heart wall was several feet long, right? So think about, picture that, right? Imagine you putting your cover around yourself several feet around. I remember working with a client, and again, this is not that it's the sex science, right? But we're trying to tap into the subconscious to have an idea that if we were to give it a number, what does it look like? And I remember working with a client that had miles in front of his heart. So we got to start without layers, right? So you usually the first emotions that come in with somebody that has such a large layers, usually the first ones that come in are simple, or just simple emotions. It's anger because my sister took my shirt. Okay, got it. Things that doesn't seem that they're so heavy. And then you start moving, and the closer that you start getting to the heart, every session that I do, I'm like, okay, well, how closer are we to getting rid of the heart wall? And it's like, oh, now it's not miles, now it's feet, now it's inches, now it's like, great. So we get as close as we can to have your heart open. At the end of the day, that's what we want. We want to have that heart open so that you can, as a creator, as an actor, as an artist, as a human, you can give from a place of authenticity and real emotions. And as far as the what you were explaining with getting that emotion trapped as a baby, it also happens. You can get emotions trapped that is being from generations. So it's something that you inherit. So sometimes I'm working with clients where we try to go back to understand where this emotion began, and it's like 5 generations before. And the mother lineage has been carrying this abandonment, for example. So the beauty of that is that when you're clearing and releasing these emotions now, you are also removing it from them. So if you have your mom, your grandma, your kids, you're removing it also from future generations. So it's a work that definitely goes a little deeper than it seems. The sessions, like if you everybody has a different style, but if you look at the creator of the emotion code, Dr. Bradley Nelson, if you look at one of his sessions, they move so fast that you're like, did he do? There's not these like heavy emotions that you're processing. This is not therapy. We're not going to re traumatize the person. This is literally you're moving into emotion to the next, to the next, to the next. And sometimes that's what I'm saying. People at the end of the session feel like, okay, I don't feel anything. I remember I have a friend who's a big, big, big skeptic. And he was like, I don't feel anything. This is whatever. And I say, okay. I'm like, why don't you give it a week and then you tell me? And at the end of that week, he's like, oh my God. He's like, first, I felt the emotions stronger. Like I just was super triggered and activated. And then I just felt like this release. I'm like, yes, that's exactly what happens. So yeah, so you could be clearing emotions that were absorbed because you were in the presence of somebody else who experienced it. You could be clearing emotions that are inherited. You could be clearing emotions that are yours, that you generated them yourselves. So there's all that different layers of the work that goes into it.
It's not the only way for actors to deal with their emotions and get it out, because you could do fascia, which is touching the body parts, and through that process emotions come up.
Hmm.
But I find this very fascinating in your identifying it and then you're releasing it. In therapy, you may identify something and live with that for the next 10 years. And sometimes therapy becomes just as traumatic as the original
Yes.
trauma.
Yes. And then you're just talking about it depending on the kind of therapy, right? But there is definitely a lot of re traumatization that can happen when you are in
Yes.
therapy. Yeah.
And the fact that you can get to this and go, okay, this is what I have to, this is the thing that was causing my pain, this is the thing that was causing my trauma, this is the thing that was causing my doubt or my fear or my confusion,
Hmm.
and now I'm releasing it so I
Yeah.
can be clear. And I love the idea of it. I love the possibilities of it. And even though it is a new science, and the gentleman who wrote the book, I'm sorry, I didn't write down his name, but the gentleman who wrote the book talks about it's a new science, so
Hmm.
they're working through it, but he has found a lot of success. And as someone who has taken it, has done the process, and now you are a practitioner of it, how
Hmm.
does that work for you? Like what are the results you're seeing? You saw it work on you, but now
Hmm.
you're doing it on other people. How
Yeah.
is that process?
I think it's important to mention why I became a practitioner because when I was a client and I was definitely seeing the improvements in my life, I had no idea or desire to do this work, right? I was just taking it and enjoying it, right? And I started with a very structured program with her where I was seeing her at first. It was like weekly, and then it became bi-weekly, and then eventually it became like once a month. And now I see her like once a quarter kind of thing for tune up. But what happened is that I started working with her around Thanksgiving of 2020. I started seeing the results in January. So it was rather quickly. And then in February, I lost my dad. And I felt like I was going to go back to that dark place. I felt like this is, I don't know what I'm going to do. And one of the first things I did is I reached out to her and I say, I don't know if this is going to help me. I say, I'm grieving. I don't know. And she said, well, I don't want to force it, of course, but the sooner we clear the energy, the easier it's going to be for you to move through the process, especially because I had gone through the loss of my sister and the loss of my brother, and I had no tools when I did that. I lost my sister in the year 2000. So it's been 24 years ago. It does feel like yesterday sometimes. Then I lost my brother in 2016, so several years later. And then I lost my dad in 2021. So again, before that time, before I lost my dad, before I came into the emotion code, and before I was in LA and try meditation and other things, I had no tools. I came from a family who were just like, just be strong, you got this, blah blah blah, and then you just push it down, push it down, push it down. So my first session with my practitioner, very first one, I've never met this woman before. Again, she was recommended by my friend. She didn't know anything about me. She was not in social media, so there was no way that she knew anything about me. And I wasn't very public about my story either back then. And the first emotion that came up was grief. And I broke down because I'm like, how do you know this? And she's like, I don't, but your subconscious does. And it was the first time that I got to process that grief, that I got to express it. And I've been to therapy before, but hey, this was different. So when she said that to me, when I lose my dad, and she says, the sooner we start clearing the emotions, you're not gonna be in that place that you were. I'm like, okay, let's do it. And I remember it was very painful. It was very painful to sit through a session without sobbing, right? Because the funny thing is that the week before my dad passed away, I was in a session with her. And for some reason, right, all the emotions that were coming up were inherited emotions from my dad the week before he passed. And I'm getting goosebumps because I'm like, I feel that he gave me the gift of processing and moving and getting rid of those emotions finally, so I could experience what I experience now, so that I could have that freedom. So of course, you have doubts the moment that it happens. It's like, well, what the heck? I thought I was getting better, and look at me, I'm back at this dark place. And she's like, well, you don't have to be. And we worked together for several months, and it definitely made a big, big, big difference. And one day, so when my dad was passing, I didn't know, by the way. It's not like I was expecting it. It was very sudden, and it was like I got a call in the morning that he was in the hospital, and by 1 p.m. he was gone. It was very, very fast. But right before that 1 p.m., I started seeing specks of light, like in places. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. What's going on? Somebody must be reflecting their watch or something. And I heard in my mind, not an actual voice, but I saw the words in my mind, follow your light. And I was like, okay, this is getting really weird. We get home, and within an hour, I get a phone call that he was gone. So when I'm working with my practitioner, I'm starting to put things together, and I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, am I supposed to be doing this work? Is that what my dad meant? Follow your light? I'm like, huh. So I asked her, and I say, do you think I can do this? Do you think I can become a practitioner and do what you do? And she's like, I've been waiting for you to ask. I've been waiting for you to tell me that you were ready, because I can tell that you're meant to be doing this. And I say, okay, I'm so used to make decisions very impulsive. So I'm gonna sit with this. I'm gonna process it and see how it feels. If I'm still excited about this in a few weeks, then I'm gonna do it. And I did. And then I ended up graduating the day of my dad's anniversary.
Mm. You started this process, you started doing this process. What led you to rekindle your light, your podcast?
Yeah. That's exactly all connected, right? I say that the emotion code was that door that opened that creativity for me, right? So I realized that my creativity was beyond being an actor, that I had so much more that I wanted to create, that I wanted to express myself in different ways. And a few months after I graduated from the emotion code program, I signed up for another program. Again, very divine led. It was kind of like I'm like, I think I need something else to complement the emotion code. Like, I love doing the emotion code, but what I love the most during those sessions is the coaching part of it, when I'm actually talking to people and getting them through it, which you don't have to do, by the way. Again, the technique itself is very boom, 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 20 minutes, you're done. My sessions are 1 hour because I go through everything with them. I make sure that things are being understood. We have
When
an
you're
action
taking
plan.
on the client, when you're
Yes.
taking, you do an hour with them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is the same way that my practitioner does it. So I definitely model it after what I learned from her because I like that and I see the value in that. But I felt I wanted more. I'm like, well, if I'm going to offer this 1 hour session and we're going to get rid of the trapped emotions, how can I be better at the coaching part of it? I'm like, I think I want something else. And then on Instagram, they hear you, whatever it is, they read your brain. And then I see an ad for this particular institute that we're preparing coaches to be a spiritual coaches and soul purpose coaches. And I'm like, this sounds really interesting. And I called and I was enrolled by the end of the day. And that program changed my life, just like the emotion code did. It just added so many more layers.
So while the pandemic is happening, you are just taking the information and just processing it.
And I had a full-time job, so I was still working. And occasionally I was still doing voiceover work because, I was in the safety of my house. So yeah, so I was still doing a lot of things. So it was not like I had the luxury of being like, well, I'm not doing anything. No, it was tough. It was really, really challenging for me to manage all of those things at once. And mind you, I was still grieving, I was still going through that. And I got sick with COVID, which really kicked my body in a really, really, really bad way. It affected so many things that I'm still dealing with. And so I was navigating all of these things at once. The code helped me a lot to get through the mental portion of it. But there was some physical ailments that were also coming from COVID and from the vaccine or from both. I still don't know. Probably we'll never know.
When you got COVID, you had the vaccine.
I had gotten it a few weeks before, and I started having some weird symptoms after, and it related to my heart. I was like, why is my heart speeding out of
Mm.
nowhere? Like, but I felt it the moment I put the vaccine, that's when I started feeling it. I was like, this is very weird. And then I got COVID, and then it just triggered the rest of it in a very strange way. So it's been 2 years of working through all of these health things, and if I didn't have the tools, I know how much harder it would be. So I'm super grateful that I was able to do those things during the pandemic. And going through that program, I remember sometimes showing up in class like with 1 hour of sleep because again, I would insomnia was a big one that came in through that process too. And I was just like a zombie, but I still showed up. And that was the thing. I was showing up every single time. I was in every class every single week for 6 months. I did not miss one class. And I did all that process and then came out on the other side with a certificate, right? So I'm a soul purpose coach, Dharma coach, who does emotion code and uses many other tools to help people rekindle their light. So when I was coming up with the name, I knew it had to be something about light because that's what my dad told me, right? That's the message I got. But follow your light felt too generic. And then I had reignite and then I had rekindle. And I was like, Then I'm like, no, rekindle is more like you already have that light within you. You just have to like get it on again. So I went with Rekindle, and the podcast idea came to me in a deep meditation session that we had after I graduated. We had a retreat, and during that meditation, I got up and I announced that I was going to be a podcaster and it was going to be Rekindle Your Light, and that was it. And The rest is history. So yeah.
What's great about Rekindle Your Light is it's great for actors, it's great for creatives, it's great for anyone who wants healing. You have what, 60 episodes so far?
Mhm.
You interview so many different people from all walks of life. I love your podcast. First of all, let me just give you your props because you set it up so beautifully. I remember when you were just announcing it and you were just putting out your posts on social media and saying it's coming. I want you to know. You did such a beautiful job alerting the audience and starting to put it together. I was so impressed. I just want to say you are just doing amazing work. And
Oh,
as an actor, you have really taken advantage of the tools available. You know, you just keep going. You are the energizer bunny. You just keep going. You keep showing up. It was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. Okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm doing my voiceovers. I'm doing my independent projects. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. That your creativity has never paused.
yeah. In the contrary, right? Because it's been fed. So the more you feed your creativity, the more your creativity wants to speak to you. So I realized that as creatives, we don't have to have just one thing. I am a multi-passionate creative. I'm sure most of us are. You are for sure. And it's like sometimes it's really difficult for people who have all of these ideas to decide, which one do I do? Well, guess what? You don't have to choose one. You can do them all. You don't have to do them all at once, right? And one thing, something has to give when you are in the middle of creating that other thing. Like right now, I'm not producing film because I've been really busy doing my podcast. But like you said, I produced 3 seasons back to back, no stop, like no breaks, no nothing. Before I launched the podcast, I already had 30 episodes recorded. So it hasn't even been a year. It's like my anniversary is in November and I already have 60 plus episodes because then I have some bonus episodes in there. And I'm trying to align everything that I've done in my life in this podcast because my job as a coach and my job as a podcaster is to bring people not only those woo woo tools that I'm talking about, but also practical tools because at the end of the day, I am a very pragmatic person. I come from the corporate world. So I used to be an event planner. That's why I have a lot of good skills in production because I'm like, I know how to get things done. I know how to get a project done. So it's like, but now I infuse them with the spiritual side of things that I have learned in so many years with the beautiful relationships that I have created in all the industries that I've been able to dabble. So that's why I'm able to merge all of these different people, somebody who's a medium in Germany to somebody who is an actor in LA. And the most beautiful part of it is that the message at the end of the day, if you really get naked and peel everything off, is the same. The message is the same. It's just told in different words, in different experiences, but the message is the same. We all want the same thing. We all want love. We all want acceptance. We all want to be recognized for what we do. We all want to rekindle our light. We all want to be vibrant and lead up about the things that we're doing. So I love doing the podcast so much. It's one of the best things I've done in my life.
Well, first of all, you don't dabble in anything. You master whatever it is that you are wanting to do. So I want to make that correction because you're not a dabbler. I know some dabblers. That is not who you are. You really go deep when you commit to something. You go deep. Whether it was you selling your health food,
Spreads.
food
Yeah.
that you took to farmers markets and that kind of stuff. You go deep.
Yeah.
If it's doing your independent projects, you are seeing, okay, how can I turn this around? What can I do here? So I just
Thank you. Thank you. Because that is one of my values, right? For me, quality is extremely important. So I am not going to do things just for the sake of doing them. So if I'm going to do an audition, I'm going to do it well. If not, then don't even bother to do it, right? I rarely pass on auditions because I realize what a gift they are. But whenever I recognize that there's something that is just, I'm not going to be able to provide the quality I need because that character will require perhaps speech training or something that I'm just like, I'm not going to get this done well, then I don't do it. And so my managers and my reps are very aware that for me to say no to something, they know it's because I'm not going to be able to hit what I know I'm capable of. I would just need more time. So either they give me an extension or we're going to have to pass on this one. But being the best advocate for myself because quality matters to me so much. If I'm going to do a short film, the production value is going to be the best one I can provide. So I'm not just going to record something on my phone and put it out there. No, there's something wrong with that, but it's just not who I am.
So let's talk about your acting and how all of this stuff that you have learned during the pandemic has really made you a sharper actress.
Yes, 100%. To the point where I am so clear about who I am because of all that work that I've done. I know exactly what to bring to the table that is different, whether they take it, accept it, want it or not. I've been able to get into improv class, which I never thought I would do. And I honestly don't care that I'm not great at it. I don't. I just go and I show up. And I'm like, I know I'm not that funny, but hey, I don't care. Um, so people notice that, the feedback that I'm getting, I'm either usually put on a callback or on a veil or pin, or not everything results in a booking. Not every job is for me, I'm very clear of that, but I can see, i can I can tell the results are coming from all that work because I am so confident in who I am and what I get to bring to the table. Even my accent, right? My accent was one of the things that prevented me in the past of feeling ready. I was just like, no, I can't do that because I have an accent. No, I can't. And because of the podcast too, I say, I don't care anymore. This is who I am, accent and all. So you either see it as an asset or it just doesn't work for your project, and that's totally fine. So occasionally I would get the little voice, right, that comes in and it's like, are you sure you're capable of doing this? But usually I have enough tools now that I'm like, this is just BS. Come on, you got this. So it has definitely impacted my acting career in a very, very different way. There's no this need and desperation because I am doing so many things that are lighting me up that then inevitably you're going to start attracting the right things. This year has been my most profitable year when it comes to acting. And no, I haven't done any TV shows or movies. This has just been commercial work and voiceover. And it's my best year because I am just attracting these opportunities. Some of these opportunities I haven't even auditioned for. They're just like, here, want to record this? I mean, I love it. I love that. I love that. And I have that confidence and that knowing that I don't have to worry about where the next job is going to come because it's going to come.
Well, you just said something that as actors, we think certain things are a liability, but if we focus, that liability becomes our asset.
Hmm.
It is, if you look at some of the best actors, things that they were told were their liabilities became their greatest asset. We know them because of that particular thing,
Hmm.
right? Selma Hayek has an accent. We don't go, oh my God, she'd be so much better if she didn't have that accent. Javier Bardem, Penelope Cruz, and the list goes on. We could talk about Latin accents, we could talk about British accents, we could talk about German accents. Actors that come with an accent sets them apart. And if they have the confidence, it takes them to the top. It's not just, oh, the guy with the accent. No, it becomes your calling card. So
Hmm.
it is beautiful in everything that you're discussing. It is about owning yourself, clearing your path, right? You're clearing your way. You're getting your instrument clear to flow, to go
Yes.
to that place of creating art. And So we've talked about this, but just to simplify it for someone who's listening, who all of this may be over their head a little
Mhm.
bit, how do you use the emotional code to process creativity, to get to that place where you can just be creative, where you
Mhm.
can flow, where if you felt like, oh, I had writer's block, or I felt so stuck, I went to that audition and I choked. How many times do actors go to auditions or they do a self-tape and they just feel stuck? It's like
Yeah.
they just can't get past that wall. That,
Yep.
you talked about the heart wall, but they can't get past the thinking wall because
Mhm.
there's so much in their thoughts. How does the emotional code help them with that? Because a lot of times we're sabotaging,
Mhm.
and does that come from a place of emotion that now we are putting too much energy to think about it?
Yeah. So the emotion code is just one tool, right? And for me, like for people who work with me, the emotion code is the first tool that I use with clients because I call it that phase of release. We're going to get rid of that stuff that is no longer serving us, right? But there is that other part of reprogramming limiting beliefs, and there's several exercises around that. And the way that I continue to work with clients is like it's releasing, reprogramming, rekindling, which is when we work on your authenticity and your values, which is so important. Understanding what you stand for, what separates you from the rest, what is your particular dream, what is your highest self. And then we go to the part of realizing things, making them happen, taking action, right? So one thing cannot exist without the other. And the way I see it, I don't see it as a linear process, I see it as a circle where sometimes we actually have to jump from one thing to the next because things are coming up that are probably coming from trapped emotions. So we got to go back to that first phase. But if you were to use just the emotion code, because it's like, listen, lady, you're complicating this for me. I just need to release these emotions. I know that I'll be better if I do this. There's two things that I would recommend. One, read the book and see if you can do it by yourself, right? That is very valid. I don't really feel the same way when I work on myself than when I work with a practitioner. But some people do see the benefit of doing that. So that is one way to do it. It's totally going to help you with getting rid of things that are just on the way of your creativity. You start clearing energy and inevitably you're opening space for the other good energy to come in, for that creativity to come in, for the opportunities to come in. Just like when you have a closet full of clothes, right? You need to get rid of your old stuff before you buy new stuff, ideally, so that you are not in clutter. So the same thing is happening with your body, the same thing is happening with your mind. You need to clear the clutter. And the emotion code is one technique and tool to do that. The second way, which is my preferred method, is find a practitioner. Find a practitioner that will guide you through several sessions to begin with a hard wall, get rid of that hard wall, and see how that starts opening things for you. Notice the change, stay in awareness, practice mindfulness, and add any other tool that you think is helpful for you, whether it's meditation, being in nature, playing with your pets, whatever it is, right? It's a combination of things. There's no one magic tool, there's no one magic wand. It's a combination of things. But to me, it's a really good tool to begin the process because again, it has worked wonders for me.
I love how you've taken everything and brought it into a system. I love that because as actors, we need a structure first, then we need a system, then we need a coach. When you're saying, talk to a practitioner, that's a coach. That's
Mhm.
someone who's guiding you through the process to help you get to where you want to go. Because as actors, we either get in our shame, we stay in our trauma, we stay in our head, we beat ourselves up, we get into imposter syndrome.
Mhm.
A lot of actors give up their dreams not because they're not good, but because they get in a stuck place and they can't get out. We talked about jealousy earlier. I've known actors who become so jealous of other actors working, and they just implode when they should be doing their work. If I'm
Yeah.
doing my work, I can't be focused on what you did. I always find when actors start complaining about other people and how everybody, I go, you're not working. You're
Mm.
not minding your business. Mind your business. What do you have to do for your business today? Do you need to get off of social media for a period of time? Do you need to get into a class? Do you need to go get a stylist to revamp your look? Do you need to take a different kind of class? Do you need a coach? Do you need somebody who's going to hold you accountable? You have to look inward to go, you know what? I'm focusing too many days on Tom, Peter, and Mary, and I'm not looking at what I need to be doing. And we get into this victim mentality. I can't do it. I get up early, go to bed late, work on your craft. Do you need to learn Shakespeare? Do you need to learn how to do voices? You have to feed your actor. You have to feed that creativity. You cannot be looking at everybody and not doing your work or
Mhm.
blaming the world. Yes, COVID came, the pandemic happened, we shut down, but people figured out a way to make things continue to go.
Yeah.
We figured it out.
Yeah.
In spite of all the trauma, all the deaths that occurred, all the sickness that happened, the human spirit figured out a way. What are we going to do right now? What can we do right now? And I think as an actor, we have to get in that mindset, because when we get the script, we have to figure it out. We have to look at the text.
Yeah. It's like we have to take agency in what we want with our career, right? And not all careers look the same. Some people might be completely happy and content doing just voice work, right? I love it, I'm enjoying it, but I still want to do TV, I still want to do the other stuff. So what do I have to do in order to continue to get those opportunities, right? So I decided, you know what, right now I'm going to do improv because I know that I'm getting a lot of auditions for multicam. Okay, well, that's what I need to do, right? So you got to figure out what is it that you need to do for that career that you envision. And the thing is, you can always change your mind. You can always say, you know what, this is a lot of work. This is not for me. I know a lot of actors who have left acting because they realized that it was not as easy as they thought it was going to be. And I know a lot of actors who have left the business because it didn't happen fast enough for them. So ask yourself, are you in this for the long run? Because this is a marathon. There's no sprint here. I've been in Los Angeles for 10 years and I can count with my hand how many TV jobs I have booked. I'm very fortunate that I have. I know people who have been here the same amount and have never booked, right? So it's like, hey, I'm very grateful for what I have, but if I want to go next level, if I want to go guest star level, well, I have to do the work. I can just expect that it's gonna come to me. As magnetic as I feel I am, I'm like, I still have to put in the work. So what's that gonna look like for me? So I will need at some point to start prioritizing that next step. That's going to look in the form of my new headshots. It's going to look in the form of the teachers that I'm working with. And you said it, coaching is super important. And this is just not acting coach. This is when I come handy for those people that need that mindset reboot, right? It's like you sometimes it's not your craft. Sometimes it's literally your mindset. So it doesn't have to be me. I'm just saying you need to be working with a coach. I still work with a coach. I have a coach that I am in a year-long program because I'm like this is not acting. This is my business coach, my spiritual practice coach, right? I have that, and I have a therapist, and and then I coach when I have a big audition, and I have a speech teacher.
You have your team.
Yeah, you have to. You have to.
I remembered the emotion code talks about energy medicine. What is that? Because I thought that was fascinating.
Well, think about feeding your soul, right? Feeding your energy, right? You feed it what you experience. You're feeding your energy with either the negative talks in social media or the positive talks in social media if you consume social media or TV, right? So it's like it's what you choose to feed it. So when you're using the emotion code, you're feeding your energy, you're transmuting the bad energy and opening space for the good energy. So it's like you're feeding your spirit, you're feeding your soul. That's what it means.
I like that. When you started to consider acting, you had a teacher who told you and gave you permission to dream big. What was that process for you that somebody said to you, hey, you could really do this?
Yeah. I always say that I don't remember many of my teachers. I don't know, maybe I just have really bad memory. But there's three teachers that have changed my life. And he was one of them. And he might not even know it because I haven't talked to him in 20 years. But because he gave me that permission, it opened my mind to the possibilities, right? I never expected that I was going to do anything other than regional theater in Spanish. That's all I was doing. It was a hobby, but I wanted more. I just didn't know how to go about it. So when somebody sees the potential in you and say, you should be taking this seriously, you should give it a try. It changed my life.
So, who was this teacher?
So his name, I hopefully he will listen to this one day. His name is Ross Blackwell. He's a working actor, very, very talented working actor in the Southeast. He still teaches. And I was taking an on camera class. He was, we're talking about, this is before self tape. So this is like super, super long ago. And he was willing to give me his time to prepare me for an audition in New York so that I could enter a summer program. And we did that. I coached with him for a few weeks. I prepared my Shakespeare monologue, I prepared my contemporary monologue, and I got in. And then I decided to stay in New York. That's exactly how everything changed. And one thing led to the next, to the next. Then in New York City, I enrolled into the William Esper studio. I did the conservatory for 2 years, and my teacher there is the other teacher that changed my life. That's David Newer. And again, he saw something in me that allowed me to dream big. And he said, you should definitely check out LA. I think it will suit you well. And I was in New York. I spent 7 years in New York, and I did a lot of theater there. And I started doing some commercials, some voiceover, but very timid. Very, very, very slow moving. And then when I came to the Olympics here in in LA, I felt I had to start over. I felt I had to start over from zero. So there's a really, really good studio here, LA acting studio, that there's a husband and wife, and it's Jamieson and Jackie, and they are amazing actors themselves. She does the comedy, he does the drama. She's mind blowing. And I train with them. I've been in several of their programs, and usually when I coach with them.
I want to talk about what you got out of the conservatory at the Esper acting studio. I have interviewed Joanne Barron. She actually studied with William Esper. He was the one that helped her start doing teaching as well as being an actor. So I just want to, and I've heard good things about him. What was your takeaway in the conservatory? Three things that you've taken away from the conservatory that you use today, that it is part of your toolkit.
It's always going to be you living in the imaginary circumstances, but it's always you. So you got to pull from your own experience. That's number one. Number two is the moment before and the moment after. Life was happening before that scene, life keeps happening after that scene. Number three, nothing happens if nothing happens in the scene. You cannot move the scene forward unless something makes you move it. Whether there's a exclamation point, a comma, you don't move the scene until something triggers you to move the scene. And for that, you have to be so present. You have to listen so well that you notice that little wink in the person's eye, that you notice that she's thinking about something else now. And that makes me ask the question, what's going on or what happened. So those three things I think are, yeah, I always been complimented on my listening skills. And I think that a big part of that, I owe it to the studio, to the William Esper studio.
Going back to listening, as actors, that is probably one of the most important things we are asked to do in our work, is to listen. Not listen so we could say our line, but listen with heart, to hear what's going on so we know what our intention is,
To let us affect us. Yeah.
or what we're going to go for. You
Hmm.
know, what, you said what? And how will I take that?
Hmm.
Not, oh, she's saying her line, now I get to say my line, but to really engage, really become present with that other person. And also, in that listening, if you're rehearsing, when you come back to do the performance, it's going to be different than the
It's never going to be the
rehearsal.
same. It's never going to be
Yeah,
the same. It
because you're
can't be the
listening
same.
differently. You're also
Yeah.
listening differently. It's
Yeah.
a different moment. It's like you've done a lot of theater, so every night doing theater is never the same.
Hmm.
If you're really listening, if you're really present, it's never the same.
Yeah.
Never. It's like stand up. If you're really committed to the material, and you are taking in the room, it's never the same. You may have your setup, your punchline, but it's still going to come out differently because the audience has a different energy.
Hmm.
And so, there are comics that they do the same thing every night. There are actors that do the same thing every night, but they're not present. They're not, um, so I think that is an awesome thing to share. Where do you want to be in 5 years?
Hmm. I am one of those people who I have a really hard time seeing that far ahead. I really have. I think a part of it is maybe because I have been so affected by life changes, sudden life changes, that sometimes for me the day to day seems so precious, that awareness of mortality is so present in my life for all the reasons that I talked about, that it's really hard for me to paint the picture. So when I close my eyes and I try to see myself in a place, it's hard, but I do know how it feels like. And it feels very peaceful, and it feels very grounded and very loving and very supported. It feels like I am extremely happy with my choices, that I'm surrounded by the right people, but my pets, by my loved ones, and that whatever is it that I'm doing, because it could go in so many different directions, I am just enjoying it so much.
What would you like your legacy to be?
That's such a good question. I talked about that in the podcast because I'm not a mom by choice. And I think that society has taught us to believe that our legacies, whatever we do with our kids, whatever we leave behind there. And then somebody who I was interviewing, a very, very wise woman that I adore, she said to me, "This is your legacy. This is part of your legacy. Your podcast is part of your legacy." I know the impact that I'm able to create in other people's lives. I know because I've been told. I know because I've seen it. I have witnessed it. I have, from my hospitality days 20 plus years ago, I have former employees who, till this day, they still tell me the impact that I had in their lives. That's it. For me, that's it. The fact that somebody would say, she lent me a hand when I needed it, she believed in me. The way that I spoke about my teacher, I hope that somebody speaks about me that way.
Hmm. When you were talking about legacy, I was reminded of The Artist's Way, Julia Cameron. that book has, that is a tremendous legacy to leave. I mean, I use that book. I've used that book 10 times,
Hmm.
always going back, always finding new stuff in it that I need to uncover, that I need to work on. And I think legacy is not just physical children that you leave behind, but it's also creative children that you
Hmm.
leave behind. It could, you know, it could be a book you write, or a system you create, or a painting. We still run to the Louvre to see Mona Lisa.
Yeah.
You know, we go to see films where the filmmaker died a long time ago. We'll go see a classic film. You know, it's playing at a revival house. Ooh, I'm going to go see Sunset Boulevard. I'm going to go see a film version of Taming of the Shrew. It has, legacy is so much more than just children.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I'm glad you brought that up, because it is not necessarily the case. There are many women who have left incredible legacies that didn't have biological children, or they raised other people's children. If you think of someone who left an incredible legacy, Mother Teresa. Mother
Hmm.
Teresa had no children, but she cared for everyone else's children. She was in Calcutta doing motherly stuff for those children that had no family. So is she less than somebody who had a couple of kids? I don't think so. I just think there's so much weight to what you bring in the world, and you're bringing light, you're
Yeah.
bringing transformation to help other people, and you have always walked in light. You know,
Yeah.
since I've met you, you have always walked in light. You have always walked in who you were. You've always been looking at how can I do this, what can I do that. So I am, I'm a, first of all, I'm such a fan of yours, and I am
Likewise.
also uh, so inspired by watching how you grow. You know, I just find it very inspiring, and I thank you so much. And
No.
my last question to you is, how how did using the Acting Smarter planner help you?
I need a structure. Yeah, I that's why I also created a system, right? Because I need a structure. I am a type A. Again, I come from a producers and event planning brain. So for me, having very specific things to go about, to tracking is so important. I think that we don't value sometimes enough when we look back at things. It's almost like you are creating evidence for the things that you actually have accomplished, so that we can measure things differently, not by the results but by the journey. And the only way to see the journey is by tracking it. So that was super helpful for me to be able to see, like, oh my goodness, I had all these auditions I forgot about already. So, or details about, like, oh, it seems that the my I discovered that my color is very similar to the one that you're wearing when I go to auditions, like that that line of corals and peach and oranges. I'm like, okay, it seems like people respond really well to this. Okay, guess what I'm going to be wearing for my next audition. So all those little things, is very nuanced, and I love getting that.
Was there anything when you got the book that you didn't know of before, or you never thought of before, that was like, oh wow, what a tool?
To be honest with you, I think in general, everything felt like a tool for me because I was not diligent about tracking things. I was not diligent about planning things or being strategic about my acting stuff. I think because everything else that I've done in my life has been so strategic and so planned out, I felt that there was this freedom, but freedom doesn't mean not doing the work or not tracking the work or not planning the work. So I think that it was more an aha for me in a general sense, because the whole thing felt like I need to be doing this more. I need to be clear about how am I going about my career, because it's not a hobby, it's a career.
Yeah, and freedom comes from structure.
Yes.
We don't really understand freedom. We think freedom is I'll do whatever I want, but no, it comes from structure.
Hmm.
You have to have a certain structure or the house is going to fall apart.
Yeah.
And as actors, we need that structure so that we can create, we can produce, we can live our big dreams. That it takes planning.
Even when you look at it from a point of view of an audition, right? When you know exactly what you're going to wear, when you know your lines, when you have crafted your moments before, after, and you're able to let go in the middle of it so that you can listen, going back to what we were talking about, so you can listen, you can be present.
And have
But if you're
fun.
in the middle of the audition just thinking about this and that, then there's no freedom there.
Yeah. And as you're talking about auditioning, the importance of putting down what you wear and taking a picture of it because you forget, right? You
Hmm.
said that, oh, I didn't remember I had this audition. That's what I wanted the book to include so that you could keep track of it. So on those days when you feel like nothing's happening, you can go back and go, oh, wow, I had 12 auditions in 3 months. What do you mean
Yeah.
nothing's happening? It may not be happening at this moment. Now, what can I do? Oh, those 12 auditions that I had, I can send little thank you notes to the casting director.
Or even noticing like, "Oh my goodness, I went to the same casting office 6 times out of the 12. Hmm, that's good. They must like me."
Yes, and that's something you can talk to your agent about, saying, they keep calling me in. This is exciting because it also encourages the agent who
Mhm.
may not be paying attention to what they're sending you out on stuff, but they may not be keeping track of
Oh, for sure.
you've gone to this casting office 6 times, or they called you in, or you had 6 callbacks, even though you didn't book. I spoke to an agent about it, and he talks about how he tracks all his actors. He keeps track of all his actors. He says if they go on an audition and they get a callback or they get an avail, that's as good as gold. He can't expect any more. He wants the client to book the work, but he also sees the fact that they were put on avail or they got a callback, that to him says the actor is on the right track. And
Mhm.
I think that's important for actors to know that you may not have booked it. I wish that was something someone told me when I was starting out, because I remember one season going up on 7 pilots, and it came down to me and one other person, and I didn't get any of them. And it devastated me for a whole year because I was like, I didn't get anything. Instead of having the agent say to me, look at what you've done.
Mm.
He was
Mhm.
like, well, maybe go and this is what he told me. He said, you should go change your nose, go have plastic surgery because that's what's keeping you from working. If you changed your nose, you would be working all the time. And I will tell you that I left that day, went to his office, got my pictures, and got the hell out of that agency.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. Because other people would have probably been like, "Oh, okay, that's the problem that I have to fix. Let me actually go find the first plastic surgeon around."
Goes back to what people consider your liability is your asset.
Yeah.
Because what is it that sets you apart from everybody else? And so it's just important as an actor to keep track of your stuff and be diligent about what you do and take care of the body. And so for you actors out there that need help with clearing emotional stuff, or you need help with mental mindset blocks, Ydaiber is a great person to go to. She is gentle, she is caring, she will treat you with a lot of love. And if you're good, then just listen to her podcast, Rekindle Your Light. It is on Apple, it is on Spotify, it is on a lot of other platforms. Thank you so much for joining us. This was such a treat, and you bring so much medicine to the party. I'm so
Mm.
grateful for you.
And I am very grateful for you. You are definitely one of my favorite people in LA that I've been able to connect with. So thank you for doing this and for so much that you do for actors. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you got a lot out of it. I would love to know what you think. So leave us a comment in the description below. And please share it with your friends because they might need some help too, getting rid of those emotions that are blocking them. Don't go anywhere because we have another fabulous video for you to watch. This one is with Dawn Charleston Green. She's going to break down how to self publish your own book. So let's go.